Hey everybody, this is Eric Rousseau with the Comedy Film Festival. I am joined today by a number of filmmakers that have their films playing at the festival May 8th through 10th in Austin, Texas. Let's start with a familiar face. Michael, good to see you again.
Hey, glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your film that you've got this year.
So I'm Michael Sharon. I wrote and directed a film called The Time Capsule. It's a very short, absurd film. It's about 6 minutes long about four friends who get back together to dig up a time capsule they buried 30 years ago. And it continues to escalate throughout it, step by step. My intention was I make comedies and I'm always trying to branch into different types of comedy. But the last few hadn't been as laugh out loud funny. And I really just wanted to make something to make an audience react and feel that experience again. So it's kind of a roller coaster of ridiculousness. And so it's always fun to play with an audience.
Well, looking forward to it playing at the fest this year. On another short film that we're really happy and proud to be able to showcase, we've got Grant with us with the Almond. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your film.
Yeah, hey, how's it going? My name is Grant Weinrob. I'm based in Austin, Texas. I directed the short film The Almond. The Almond follows Daniel Peterson, who is a sculptor and an artist. He kind of sees himself as this real visionary genius character. And, you know, it's kind of this battle between the way he sees himself and the way the world sees himself. Ultimately, he makes sculptures that are pretty interesting and not always well received, but one day he makes something that changes people's perspective, and you know, it goes a lot of crazy directions. But I think ultimately I wanted to really make a film that was kind of a satirical poke at the fine art world, and just like the idea of the conflict between how an artist sees their own work and how the world sees it, and which matters more, which, you know, I think is potentially subjective. But hopefully you guys have a lot of fun watching it.
Absolutely. Well, playing in that same block with the Almond is Will Wood's Slouching Towards Branson. Will, we're so happy to be able to have you on the call, but also to showcase your work. Tell us a little bit about the project.
Can I curse? Is this like, okay, cool. I once almost knocked a local radio station off the air with like 40K and FCC fines because I got a little too excited, and so I have a tendency to curse instead of going you know, if you know, I'll use it as like an adverb. You know, I'm one of those people be like, I fucking went to the store, I fucking got an ice cream cone. So I just wanted to make sure, because otherwise I'm just going to be stumbling over my words. I'm still going to stumble over my words, but yeah. Anyway, it's what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Well, I was asking for you to introduce yourself and your film, but I feel like also you inadvertently just gave us such a taste of what we have to look forward to for Slouching Towards Branson.
And I think we're good, yeah.
Awesome. Well, for those that need a little bit more context, Will is I feel like, I think you describe yourself as just, you know, a multi-dimensional kind of artist. Maybe dimension isn't the right word, but there's music, there's stand-up comedy, there's storytelling. You do some impressions. You kind of hit all the notes in this, whether you want to call it stand-up or one-person show. And we're so happy to be able to showcase that at the fest.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
And lastly, we have Adrian on the call. Adrian, tell us a little bit about yourself and your project.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Adrian Manzano from New York, Miami. I'm a writer, comedian, director, actor, a little bit of everything. And Comedia del Adri, it's actually a pilot, a sitcom pilot. And it's bilingual, bicultural. We shot it in Mexico. And it sort of kind of shows sort of this cultural collision, showing sort of the local feel with the expats that are moving to Mexico, and showing that clash of cultures. And what started the project was my stand-up. I just sort of looked at my stand-up routine, and I started writing a story around that, about the characters and the jokes that I had in my stand-up. And this is what came out. So it's very much inspired by like that Larry David, Jerry Seinfeld type of comedy, but in English and in Spanish.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because, like, Adrian, both your film and Will's special are they're so unique yet so incredibly different. I feel like there's some similar threads. Obviously, there's stand-up that's going on there, but also this kind of like blending of genre. Like there's at times where it feels almost like sketch. It definitely feels kind of, you know, like a sitcom. So really cool, really unique. And thank you all for joining today.
Thank you.
So, Michael, tell us a little bit about how you got to the Time Capsule. It just kind of, without spoiling too much, it's just so nostalgia filled, and I'm curious how you landed on this one.
So, you know, as you know, last year we had a film there called Leverage, which was an action comedy. It was 6 days of shooting and months and months and months of rehearsals and planning. And I love that film and I'm very proud of it, but I just wanted to do something short and simple and easy after that, right? Which there are some VFX in it, and John Golson, who's in it, you know, one of the actors, kept saying to me, "You keep saying this is easy, but there's VFX." And I was like, "Listen, it's still not months and months of fight rehearsals, so it's relatively easy." I just wanted to make something, like I said earlier, like that was just to make an audience react. I wanted to bring up things to, like you said, there's nostalgia that people go, "Oh, I remember that," but then also like the next step is something really ridiculous, and that was just really kind of my goal. I'd made a film a couple years back called First Impressions, which was with Eric doing these impressions. He's so good at it, and feeling the audience, being in an audience laughing, right? That's one of the things I love about comedy. So I was trying to kind of recapture that, but in a different way. And it's hard to keep talking about it without going into details of it, because I think that people should experience it as it is. It's one of those that every couple minutes there's kind of a spoiler. So, but yeah, that was kind of my whole goal.
That's awesome. And I think that like what this speaks to is the range that you have. And obviously for anyone that knows Michael and knows your work, like I think I said this last year, you're kind of like an Austin, a Texas kind of legend when it comes to short film. So we're always really happy to be able to showcase your work and be able to show something that if you saw Leverage at last year's fest,
right,
this couldn't be more different.
right. Very, very different. Thank you. Yeah.
So speaking of something different, speaking of something that I feel like I had never seen before, Will, I've watched a lot of stand-up specials. I've watched a lot of one-person shows. I've never seen anything like your special. How did you put all the different pieces together? And I might have like undersold it earlier. Like music is a huge part of this special as well. And just tell us like how you blend everything to make all this one cohesive piece.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know. I waffle back and forth on whether I consider myself a musician first and then a comedian, or the other way around. Really, it depends on how seriously the person I'm talking to tends to take me. You know, if it's somebody who's like, you know, if somebody's like a fan of my music and just is like, "Oh, the XYZ thing about your music," in a way that makes me sense that they take me more seriously than I feel like I take myself or intend to come across. You know, I'll walk away from that, you know, interaction in my jaded little head, just being like, "Man, I'm a fucking comedian, all right? Like, stop taking me so seriously," you know? Whereas when people laugh, I go, "Why is nobody taking me seriously?" And so, you know, I feel like I think I've always just kind of had two sides that are, you know, a little bit contrary to one another. That there's, you know, I like being weird, cryptic, brooding, avant pop composer sort of character, but I also like just, you know, goofing off and saying edgy stuff on a stage. And so it's like, because I've had both of those instincts and both of those interests for so long, you know, I get bored just on a stage with my piano singing songs about my feelings. It's boring. And same thing goes for, you know, whatever. And so I think it felt like the natural direction for me to go. You know, it kind of built over time. Like, I've always worked storytelling and jokes and whatever with my performances of my songs, even songs that are a little bit more on the serious side. And when I was gearing up to come back from a big dramatic indefinite hiatus announcement that I had announced, I was like, all right, well, let's give them the best version of what I do that I can possibly give them. And so it really just came down to like sitting down with the songs and thinking about stories from my life that had happened relatively recently and trying to figure out how to put them together in a way that sends a message and is fun to perform.
There's no doubt it's a lot of fun to watch. So happy to hear that it was also fun to perform.
Thanks.
So Grant, I think similar to what Will is saying, there's this, I know you spoke a little bit about like trying to find like the humor and this like highbrow art. And I think that you're finding the balance, and more importantly, the character in your film is finding the balance of like taking yourself very serious versus, just letting people, I think, just have their own experience. Tell us a little bit about what it was to come up with that story and that character.
Yeah, absolutely. It is subjective. And I think, of course, art is subjective. And that's kind of like the point that I was hoping to make with this film. Initially, the inspiration for the Almond came from a few places. Definitely a lot of people that I've experienced in my life, and definitely, my views on kind of like the fine art world and like the ridiculousness of it and the things that we see. Like the banana that was taped on the wall years ago at Art Basel that went crazy. And it's like, you kind of ask yourself, well, why? Is it like, are people trying to be rebellious? Do they actually think this is good art? And the reality is, like, does it really matter? But I really wanted to make a film about somebody. I think it's like this perfect recipe for when you're kind of like equal parts delusional and equal parts financially wealthy. And like, it creates this recipe for like, you can just constantly validate yourself. You can be whoever you want. Like a year before Daniel was in his studio, he could have been, doing anything else. He could have been running yoga retreats in South America. Like, he can kind of be whoever he wants to be and like grasp to any identity. And he's chosen to be a sculptor, and there's something he sees in that. And I think ultimately that is what led the film to being a comedy. It's funny because initially when I came up with the concept, I was kind of like, maybe this isn't a comedy. Like, maybe this can be like a drama film that is meticulously designed for these types of people who are like Daniel, to where like somebody could watch this film and like think like, oh wow, I really resonate to this, when in reality it's kind of, making fun of them. But ultimately I think like making it a comedy served it really well, because it is ridiculous. And I think like there's also a lot of serious aspects to it. Like my personal experience as an artist, and I think a lot of artists can relate to this, is that kind of self-identity of like, what is my work? What is the meaning of my work? Does it matter? And like, what matters more? Should I be making something that I truly personally care about, or should I be making things that I think other people would like? And I think it's always a balance, and of course, if you're not making something that has a chance to be lucrative, then, maybe you should make something that other people like. But yeah, I think, what was the initial question? Sorry.
I think it was just about kind of like finding that balance of, taking your art serious, I guess, versus like taking yourself serious.
Yeah, no, I think that pretty much sums it up. It's like, and we all have to have this kind of ability to laugh at ourselves, which I think, maybe Daniel doesn't. And so it's definitely just a statement about like how we're perceived and the way that really the world sees us. Maybe it does matter a bit more. But I think ultimately there are many things that are very intentionally open-ended about the film in a way that is kind of trying to serve that statement. So, yeah.
So, Adrian, I'm curious for your pilot that you have. This does follow a stand-up comedian, and I'm curious how much was influenced by your own experiences, or just kind of riffing on certain situations and kind of coming up with these stories.
I think you said it well. It's like there's definitely a sketch comedy aspect to it, and a randomness of a stand-up set, where you're just going from joke to joke and trying to link them together. So, I mean, at times I worry, like, does this have enough of a narrative thread? But yeah, it was fun to sort of follow sort of like that sitcom classic tropes. And the stand-up was based on my life. So then obviously things evolved. My ex-girlfriend got a little upset when she found out that I was making this film because she thought I was going to be making fun of her. And in a way I am. But I don't know. I think if she does get to see it, I'm sure she'll enjoy it. But a lot of stuff you could say is a metaphor. Like that one scene at the end, I don't want to spoil it, that gets a little absurd. I look at that as a metaphor for self-sabotage. And I think that's something we all do in relationships, you know, like you're in a relationship with somebody and you're like, oh, I don't know, let me do something to fuck it up. But of course, in a sitcom comedy, I took that to a different height. And then you have sort of the thread of the white savior syndrome, and it gets a little bit, more social justice, but it's something I wanted to sort of examine, this sort of colonial mindset that a lot of expats and Europeans and Americans, when they do go to Latin America and they look at Latinos as sort of like these noble savages, and we're just here to, and the repercussions of that, of gentrification and whatnot. So it was all these kind of threads, and I left it open-ended, and making myself sort of the center of this nucleus, or like this spoke with all these crazy characters around me. I feel like that would allow me the flexibility to see where the sitcom goes. And I imagine kind of like Seinfeld, where I would take a step back and hopefully one of the other characters can sort of become more prominent as the show goes on, depending on what, who's responding. I have my favorites. I like the Korean guy. I don't know if you remember him. I thought he knocked it out of the park, that scene. So, but yeah, it was definitely, a lot of it came from, I guess, my own psychoses and different things that happened to me. So thank you guys for accepting it. We'll see how it goes.
So much of what you just mentioned, that's really interesting, because it's not just the piece itself, the pilot itself, that feels like it is, blending all these different art forms, but you raise a really interesting point in that it's the people that are revolving around these stories that it does feel, like this very blended kind of metropolitan scene that you're also examining. Was kind of taking into account like the location that you were filming in? Do you feel like that played into to this work as well?
Yeah, Mexico City is very inspiring. I'm not from there. So when I moved there a few years ago, it does remind me of New York. It's almost like a blend of everything, because it's got a big North American influence, Latinos, a lot of Latinos from all the different countries there. And then, of course, Europe as well. So it's a very inspiring city. And, the art that's come out of Mexico City and all the famous artists, and, forget about the directors, like they keep winning Oscars. Mexican cinema is insane. It's so fucking good. So yeah, I try to be inspired as much as I can by the city, and of course, being born and raised in New York, there's definitely going to be some of that in there as well. But yeah, Mexico City is very international, and so I was a little bit torn about that, because a lot of Mexicans, they get a little upset that you shoot in Mexico and you don't cast Mexicans. So, for example, the Korean actor, there was another Mexican actor they were neck and neck, but in the end, the Korean guy won. He was just too funny. So yeah, I told that to some of my producers. I was like, look, I wanted to look at Mexico City as an international city, which it is. So, and it's becoming more and more as more and more Americans, Europeans come in and gentrify. So, and maybe it'll ruffle a few feathers, but that biculturality, that bilinguality that's how I grew up, and that's just kind of what I know, and that's kind of feel like what I could bring, and I think for the most part, people are going to find that interesting. I hope to see like the sort of like the duality of the Mexican American experience, Latino American, having all these cultures and languages collide, and hopefully it'll make some good comedy.
One thing that you said that's really interesting, and it makes me think of Slouching Towards Branson, and that's this cast of characters that surrounds, our protagonist in this story. So Will, I'm curious for you, kind of like building that out, deciding who's included, who's not, and also realizing that you also have a significant other that is a key member of this story. Like, how did all that come together? How do the different people who are represented in this piece feel about it?
how did they feel about it? Other than my wife, none of them know. So hopefully they will feel okay. But frankly, if this company were to sue, it would ultimately have a less unfortunate effect on me financially than having bought a timeshare would have. So ultimately, I guess we're just going to cross our fingers. I didn't think too much about it, to be honest. I mostly just needed to tell a story that involved a variety of lunatics, and I figured they also were giving me fake names, so it didn't matter. And also, I don't care. These aren't people. These are timeshare salesmen. Look. The point. The point is, I just needed to tell a story that involved some characters in a way that was efficient, and I couldn't just keep going. And then he said, and then he said. So I just did their voices, and a lot of people will be like, "It's fun how you play the different characters," and I'm just like, "Oh, I guess I did. I didn't mean to, but I think that I frankly think that the people who I'm portraying, they also worked pretty hard on the character that they presented me in the real world version of what occurred too. So I think really it's just." Frankly, it's maybe a little bit postmodern in the sense that my performance is parodying another performance that, So I don't know. How do they feel? Not Frank. Once again, timeshare salesman. I don't think they feel anything at all. But my wife, she and I spoke quite a bit about what she was comfortable with my sharing, and we tried our best. Like I tried my best to like check in with her and just make sure like, hey, is this part okay? What am I doing here, there, the other thing? I remember I did a test show where I had apparently used a lot of I to describe a scene where it was kind of we, my wife and I received a note afterward about that from a woman who was saying, like, honestly, as a feminist, I found it a little bit troubling and maybe worth considering that you used a lot of I when your girlfriend was there. And I was so mad, and I was like, how dare you make my random verbiage. I'm struggling to get these words out at all. How dare you bring this into a moral sphere? And then I took the note, though. I did end up doing that because then I did feel bad. So I don't know. You'd really ultimately have to ask her what she really feels about all of it. But I think that one thing. It's weird, because the story that I tell in Slouching Towards Branson is true. The things that happened did happen. They happened kind of in their own way. I mean, some of them very literally, some people I am quoting directly, but and so that's I think always I lost my train of thought. The original question was how did everybody feel about being included in the story, right?
Something along those lines. Yeah.
I think my answer to that is everything's kosher. Don't worry about it.
In my mind, and I don't know if you ever have this, like, especially painting the picture of like they're putting on a performance. One day, years from now, they'll appreciate it. Even if they don't now, they'll see it and they'll be like, I remember that guy. And then they'll tell people at a party, yeah, there's this comedian. He did an impression of me in his special. And yeah, it's me. No one knows it's me, but I know it's me. So I think that it'll all come around, and regardless, everything will be great, like you said.
That would be nice if that were the case. That's nice. And whatever they do, whatever. The way in which people like that participate in reality, it's not, it doesn't have any effect on how I feel about anything.
And I mean, like, the way, I will say that, to that point, the way that you in the special portray that kind of mentality, and for those that I think are picking up on context clues, one of the big driving plot points here revolves around a timeshare. And Will, the way that you kind of paint the mindset and the tactics used are just it's so interesting. It doesn't get talked about a lot. So I think that's something that you really put us in that place. You put us in that mentality and really show what that is and what that, like, I don't even want to say like culture is, but what that profession is that's used. It's very fascinating.
I think the word culture has an extra syllable on the end that's kind of changing the it's a cult. But I think when it comes down to it, I joke a lot, and I am not exactly particularly kind to these people in my portrayal, but I also don't want the point of the film to come across as like, fuck these guys, like, that's really not the point. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I feel that in that story, the idiot is me. That it's really a story about my own failures there. So I do want to make that point, because I think that the characters aren't forces of nature, and they aren't villains. They're just people. And I also just want to give a quick extra bit of grace to the Fudge Frog as well, because I think that acknowledging his genuine humanity is an important part of the story, and I don't want the movie to be read as like just purely like critical of people, because it's really not the point. The subject of the criticism, I hope, by the end clearly becomes me, but I guess we'll see.
I'm really excited for people to see this interview and be like, Fudge Frog, Branson, timeshare. I have to see this, like, because that's, I mean, like, just sitting down and my crew with the Comedy Film Fest sitting down and like watching this, I know it's just like, it's like, what's going on? So I hope people have that same feeling right now, because the journey that you take us on is so fun. And I just invite everybody to just go in with the little bit that we've teased and enjoy the ride, because it really is a good one.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
So something that we started to do this year, and I realize everything I'm about to say, y'all are at a complete disadvantage, because like I said, my crew, we've seen y'all's movies. We love y'all's movies. We've chosen to program y'all's movies, but at the same time, we understand that when we get this group of people together, when we get creatives, filmmakers, comedians all together, and we have these discussions, sometimes you all have questions for each other. So I'm gonna, if there are any questions, take a back seat. If anyone has questions for anyone else, now's the time. For Michael, for Will, Grant, and Adrian is saying, yes, you've got a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question for Grant. I was wondering if, from what you described, it reminded me of that classic story, the Pygmalion effect, or the story where the Pygmalion effect comes from, or I can't remember the exact story, where I think it's an Italian story where he creates a work of art that is so beautiful that he falls in love with it. I was wondering if that was somewhat inspiring for your story. Sounds familiar.
No, but I'll have to look into that now. I think, like, funny enough, I mean, it's maybe the opposite effect in my film, not to spoil it, but like, I feel like in a sense it ruins his life, or at least he thinks it does, and maybe it doesn't. But I think no, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, in the original, you could say it ruins his life too, but he just becomes so obsessed with his art. But yeah, I saw it once as a play, and it's like that's where the term Pygmalion effect comes from. So yeah, check it out.
Any other questions that anyone has?
I got one more for Will. So this is a film or a one-man show? This is I was
Yeah, I know it's a little unclear. It is. I mean, it's a film. It's gotta be able to put it on a screen, but it's a filming of a live performance.
okay. So you've done this one man show before.
I'm sorry.
So you have done this as a show live traveling.
Yeah, it's a filming that was done over the course of a tour. So there's a few different shows stitched together, and yeah, hopefully in a way that helps support the story and the characters. Yeah, that's the intention anyway. Is there a live performance element to what your film includes as well?
I mean, if I could do a type 5, but no, it's just I could, but no, it's just a sitcom pilot, very very standard.
So as we start to wrap things up here, I'm going to ask the question that some filmmakers absolutely loathe and some they tolerate. And that is what's happening next. I know that it's always an interesting place when you're on the film festival circuit because, you're focused on this film. You're focused on, the next screening. You're focused on potential distribution. But I'm curious, and I think the audiences are also curious, what is the next project that we have to look forward to? We'll start with Michael, and I'll say I know for Michael, you've got something already cooking that's already going around, but maybe there's something else as well.
Yeah, so this is going to be the last screenings for the Time Capsule. We already have a short proof of concept called "It's Hard Not to Be Romantic About Time Travel" that we started with the festivals last fall. I just completed a final-ish draft of a feature of that and started submitting that to festivals. So that has been going out there. That's been really fun. It's kind of a play on romantic time travel. It's about a guy who just got out of prison for something he didn't do, and his best friend is kind of a conspiracy theorist guy, really into weed, and he decides that the movie Somewhere in Time is actually how to time travel. And he uses weed to fall in love with someone, to go back in time, and it just becomes this whole thing. It's very silly, but it's also about dealing with things that happen to you and moving forward and not getting stuck in grief in the past and things like that. So we got that, and then there's another feature that I'm trying to get funding for. That's a lower budget feature that we're trying to move forward in the next year.
That's awesome. Got a lot cooking. Really looking forward to it, and looking forward to what you bring us next year. Grant, tell us a little bit about what's going on post the Almond.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple fun projects I'm working on. Mainly, I'm developing a feature that I plan to shoot next year. So my background actually before the Almond was kind of producing and directing a lot of music videos and commercial kind of productions. And so I feel like I carried that into what the Almond was. The Almond was my first narrative piece that I've written or directed. And so I definitely, I would say, produced it with more of that kind of mindset that I've carried over. And I think that ultimately, my favorite movies personally as a filmmaker are very all over the place. But I love comedy and I love the dark. I think probably my two favorite movies would be Breaking the Waves by Lars von Trier, which is a very dark indie film from the 90s, and then Billy Madison. And I feel like I would love for my work to kind of be somewhere in between that. And so going back to my roots of my project I'm working on now, I've been working with a hip hop artist out of LA, which is where I'm originally from, named Natia the God, Natia, Natia. I've been doing music videos for him for almost a decade, and basically we're working on a feature film that's kind of a fictionalized version of his life in the mid 2010s when he was basically homeless around Los Angeles trying to make it as a rapper. So there's definitely going to be a lot of elements in it that are comedic, but it's very much just real life. So, there's funny things, there's things that are more dark, there's things that are kind of scary, but it's definitely going to be probably a much lower scale as far as the production. My goal would be for it to be something that I can kind of just either film with myself or have a very tight crew, kind of run and gun, Dogma style. So that's what's coming up next for me.
Tonally, even if story wise that is very different than the Almond, tonally there's definitely some similarities in what people see in the Almond versus these other projects. So that's really cool.
For sure. And I think it's also, to your point, it's another film that's about a artist who is a male and just kind of their perception of themselves. I mean, really what the film is going to be about, it is a true story of like this time in his life when he was homeless, but it's about an artist who, I guess in this case, is very undeniably talented. And you know, just like how he sees himself and how he believes in that and has to keep pushing for that against all odds. And even against like things that are self-destructive on his end. So yeah, definitely some parallels there.
So Adrian, you know, this project is a pilot. Curious if, you know, there's been discussions about continuing it on, or, you know, possible distribution, next steps for it, or are you turning your attention to a different project completely?
No, I really would love to do season 1 at least. I have it all kind of arced out in my head. And of course, I'm open to changes, and it's tricky. I think one of those things when you do bilingual, it can be kind of tricky because a lot of territories are like, oh, you know, is it English or is it Spanish? Doing a subtitling, it can be tricky as well because the bilingual aspect is a big part of the story, the miscommunication. And we're looking at a few channels in Mexico, Colombia, but also, you know, we have the 2 actors from one from Korea, one from Germany. So I'm going to try to see if I can get some distribution out there. And but at the very least, Tubi, I don't know. We'll see. I haven't done much of that internet low budget streaming world, but I'm going to consider it because I just feel like I like the story, and I think it deserves to kind of, you know, deserve at least 1 season. So that right now is what I'm hoping to do and do soon, because of the child actress. She's, you know, they age very quickly. So we shot that in August, and I just saw a picture of her this morning. I'm like, okay, yeah, we got to shoot soon, you know? And then I want to do my first stand-up special. So I'm also going to do that probably independently and get the cameras and then see what distribution I can get for that. So those are the 2 projects for the next 6 months to a year for now.
And Will, really interested to see what's going on next for Slouching Towards Branson, as well as I think I saw that you've got a tour upcoming. Is that correct?
Yeah. Slouching Towards Branson is currently in the process of pitching to some streaming services. The tour is a totally different thing. I kind of do 2 different shows. I do my stand-up and singer-songwriter shtick, and then sometimes I do some rock and roll shows that are a very different vibe. And we're doing an anniversary celebration because it's going to be 10 years since my second album. And so we're just doing a week in the Northeast.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And all of these films can be seen at the Comedy Film Festival happening May 8th through the 10th in Austin, Texas. We're so excited to be able to showcase them, so excited to be able to have these filmmakers with us today and a number of them with us at the festival. We hope to see you there. Thank you. See you later.